I have a few things to say about special education in this budget. There's a lot in this budget, and I want to echo all of my colleagues and what they've said. I'm a little concerned with how this budget is communicated because it's hard to find things and it's not real clear. But let's talk about special education a little bit. First of all, I'm glad this is a rough draft because that means we can make changes that are needed. I think that I've been walking, I've been visiting all of my school sites in the Bullard area and doing instructional walks, and I've learned a lot from doing that. And one of the things that I see before we move into all of these investments for special education, I want to talk about something that's really gets in the way historically in the way that we do things, and that is that there is a real disconnect between our school sites and our special education district office. Okay, and I think there's some things that they're not seeing. For one, stability at our schools is really important. And when we poach, and I'm going to use the word poach, when we poach and deplete services from our schools to make up for our management deficiencies, we do it at the expense of our students with special needs. And I'm seeing a lot of evidence of that, and I want us to take a closer look at it before moving forward with these budget asks. For example, there's a school psychologist at an elementary school that was promoted. That's great, that's fantastic. But with 6 weeks of school remaining, we're gonna move that person out to the special ed office, except for maybe a day a week or whatever. And that is very disruptive for students and very disruptive to that school site. As a school psychologist, as a former school psychologist, you build momentum with a team. You form deep connections with students, with staff, with parents, so that your work is really an art form. There's so many things that you do as a psychologist. It's not something that you could just send a support person in and pick up. And there seems to be that thinking. Like, we can pull these people out 6 weeks before the end of the school year, this person out, and it's not disruptive to put another just revolving door of psychs to go through and do that job. It's not equivalent, and 6 weeks is not very long for somebody to wait so that we don't disrupt services to students. Okay, I've also seen that our school psych services have been depleted in our Bullard area schools at Baird, Bullard Talent, and Lawless, which has not had a school psychologist all year long. All year long. And they have put that on the Bullard psychologist to provide support. That means that if you're assigned to a school and you've got a full workload, because there's not a psychologist at another elementary school like Lawless, you're supposed to go in and help support that school. And that might be fine for short-term issues, like if somebody is out sick or there's an emergency. That is what we do when we have a short-term problem. But support psychologists are not supposed to be sent in for an entire school year. Okay, that's not okay. And then when we do that, we also get very, very sloppy in our professional practices. For example, those evaluations, for some of them initial evaluations for students with suspected autism, that's a pretty complex evaluation. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot to connect with that student, those parents, and your team. We are doing those evaluations with a virtual psychologist, but we are having our seasoned school psychologists, our veterans, act as proctors so that the virtual psychologist can do the evaluation. Now that is so backwards and so messed up, I have to ask, who thought that would be okay? And I found out about that accidentally, just by visiting Lawless and checking in with the resource specialist there, who is also having to case manage the revolving door of psychologists between the virtual and the real ones that come in and do all these evaluations, and that takes away from her work as a resource specialist. Okay? I'm hearing reports of RIMS in the Hoover region demanding that we get those IEPs into compliance, and at staying after school to do testing. I mean, these are not solutions. And it really makes me lose my faith and my trust in the recommendations and the budget request here. Okay? When we ask a principal to decide, do you want a GLA, a guidance learning advisor, or would you rather have a psychologist full-time? That is an inappropriate question, because these are baseline services. They don't do the same thing. Anybody that's asking that doesn't seem to have a good understanding of what school psychologists do and what GLAs do. Okay? These are our most vulnerable kids. They really are. And where this is happening at one school, Wittrup, I mean, those kids, that's the very top. When we talk about tier 3, that's the very top of tier 3. That's one click away from hospital or residential. And yet we are depleting their psych services. They have 2 days a week. That is absurd. That should offend everybody in this room. It's not appropriate. Baird and Bullard Talent have 2.5 days a week. They are both middle schools, and they both have nearly 700 kids. You cannot do the job. I'm telling you, as a school psychologist myself, you cannot do that job well. So you have to find shortcuts. You have to find practices that are not going to be the best thing for kids to make that happen, to connect those dots. So I am very, very concerned about the budget ask. Some other questions I have about the management in special ed that hasn't really been scrutinized or reorganized the way it needs to be and the way it was recommended by the Council of Great City Schools. These are some of the questions I am going to, I look forward to meeting with Dr. Baker and Dr. Pinero this next week to get some of these things nailed down. But here are some more questions that I mean, why is special ed asking for a director to oversee differentiated assistance, significant disproportionality, local plan, transportation, data analysis, whatever that means, and when these tasks are all done by the SELPA director, which we have a vacant position now, or an interim in there, but those are responsibilities that have always been under the SELPA director. Why are we hiring another manager to do that work? And I won't ask all of these questions, but there's some nitty-gritty questions here that really need to be answered before we can look at this budget seriously for special education. No more poaching. That's my sign. No more poaching from special education. The most important thing that happens with children at schools, okay? Not in the district office. And we have to change our orientation so that our managers are at schools, so that they know what's going on, so there's not this disconnection that's happening. I'm also getting a lot of reports about a SPED manager that is bullying the folks that report to that person. These things have to be looked at fearlessly. They have to be addressed. I can't approve this budget or this, ask for special education until I know that these things are being addressed. It just can't slide. It can't keep sliding. It's been sliding for the last 20 years in special education. And I don't think anybody has the tolerance, nor should they have the patience to allow it to go on. As a district, we really need to do the right thing here. The other questions I have about literacy, and I've already got my mind on literacy coaches in our elementary schools, but I'm concerned about how we're going to fund that with a block grant that ends in 5 years. And I'm getting way ahead of our task force and everything else, but I'm just going to put that out there. We need to think about that. 5 years, that block grant will run out. We don't need literacy coaches anymore after that? I would say not. We do need them. So we need to think about this. For nutrition, our athletes need more food, and we're going to have to supplement that ourselves. We don't have enough food, enough meals that the program, the lunch program provides. Our facilities, we need deferred maintenance. The state doesn't provide it, and we need to build up a reserve. The schools in my region are very old, and they're crumbling. They're across the district. That's the way they are. So we really need to have a nice, strong, deferred maintenance tucked away so that we can take care of problems when they come up, and quickly. So that's my biggest concern. There's a whole lot of things here. It's late. We don't have the time to go into all the nitty-gritty. We should be able to do that. But I would like to have us adjust our course in special education, and I think that all of our board feels strongly about that. So, thank you. That's all my comments.